Good evening, and thank you for joining our town hall event on higher education. I'm Michael Atkinson. Tonight, I'm joined with Dr. Pauline Strong, UT Austin professor and president of the UT chapter of the American Association of University Professors, Republican State Representative Matt Shaheen, Democratic State Representative Vicki Goodwin, and Dr. Richard Johnson with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I want to start by asking each of you this exact same question, and we'll start with you, Dr. Johnson, of what you think higher education should look like and what its relationship with the Texas government should look like. We'll start with you and go down the line.
Higher education was designed to provide a high-level skill set for Texas citizens. And as we move forward and as education evolves, I believe that we need to now begin to look at the technological inputs to higher education, which is AI, and which is going to be really influenced by AI and technology, as well as preparing young men and women for the workforce. And the main thing we look at in terms of higher education, we look at, you know, how well are we gearing each one of our colleges on the university's campus to meet the needs of the workforce and the economy for Texas. Texas now has the 8th largest economy in the world. And most of our learning is going to be driven by those industries that come to Texas. And you'll see the shift in higher education moving toward technology, AI, and those sorts of things in the future. And as it relates to our government and to our state, we rely on our state because the taxpayers basically fund a huge part of higher education. And, well, the taxpayers fund the state. And so in order for the state to move forward, we have to have the educational apparatus to meet the needs for our economy.
The relationship that taxpayers have with the higher education system is certainly something that we want to get into later on. Representative Goodwin, your thoughts. What should higher education look like in the state?
I mean, higher education should be educating our young people for the jobs of today and tomorrow. There's such a wide spectrum, whether it's business, whether it's law, whether it's healthcare, whether it's aviation. There's so many things that higher education is preparing our young people for.
With that, Representative Shaheen, your thoughts on what higher education should look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's vitally important for our state. It's incredible, the growth, the economic opportunities that are going on in the state of Texas. And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that our universities, our colleges are, like what Ms. Goodwin said, is producing that workforce in the future. One of the things that I lose sleep over is what our workforce is going to look like 20, 30 years from now. The economy is changing so much. We're the 8th largest in the world right now, but we have such a diverse economy that's growing. If you look at the semiconductor industry and how that's growing in the state of Texas, and you got all your different professional services and technology influences and the like. So it's really going to be incumbent upon us to ensure that from a legislative perspective, we give the guidance, we give the funding, but it's my hope and the hope of a lot of legislators that our higher ed facilities, they just execute and produce that workforce. And it's going to be a tough job because a lot of our corporate interests out there, a lot of their jobs are changing, and quite frankly, they're not really sure AI, how that's going to impact and change our jobs. So it's a pretty difficult position that they're in right now as far as what is the workforce going to look like in 20 to 30 years, because quite frankly, I think we're figuring that out.
Yeah, Dr. Strong, your boots are on the ground. You go to work every day at a university. What do you think that relationship should look like?
I agree that higher education is partly to prepare young people for the jobs of today and tomorrow, but also to educate students in the creative and critical thinking skills that they need to open up opportunities, both for themselves and the state as a whole, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring, but we know it will bring many challenges.
With that, getting into some of the more specific questions, I'm going to start with you, Representative Shaheen. You sit on the House's Higher Education Committee, which actually met for its first time just this week. I want to start by asking you a little bit about Senate Bill 17 from last session, which drew a lot of the attention. That was the state's ban on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
Right.
Do you think the state has gone far enough, or is there more work that you would like to see done in that front?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, the reason why we're having to pass those pieces of legislation, right, is, again, we want our universities, our colleges to produce that future workforce. And so some of the DEI things that we were hearing about, that we heard testimony about, I mean, it was just silly. We had one university that had over 100 DEI employees, right? Think about all the professors and teachers that you can fund and the like. So it was really taking our universities down this direction where they weren't focused on what our workforce was doing. There was just a lot of silliness that we had to pull out. So a lot of the work that was done in SB 17 has been implemented. We've shut down these DEI offices. A lot of those positions have been eliminated. So the hope is that our universities will pivot back and really focus on what that workforce is going to look like in the future. But it just got, I mean, we were hearing stories about, because Asian students were excelling, that they started doing discriminatory practices against Asian students, and then the hiring, there was concerns about too much whiteness being perpetuated. So the hope is that silliness gets stepped aside, and then we really focus again. Let's produce some STEM graduates. Let's produce our AI technicians and our engineers and the like, and really support the future needs of our private sector and public sector in the economy.
So I suppose there's a follow-up question there, which is, do you think that we need to go further? Do we need to take this legislation further?
I think so. I think there's some courses out there that I think need to be evaluated as far as how productive are they. I think our Board of Regents probably need to step in and probably do more oversight than what they're doing today. So yeah, I think it's kind of a moving target with respect to some of these initiatives that just aren't helpful for our universities and what they really should be focused on. So yeah, I think you'll see some legislation as far as the types of courses, and again, I think we're going to, there's some legislation out there to lean more on our Board of Regents to be more involved, to do more oversight than what they're currently doing today.
Dr. Strong, as I was speaking with Representative Shaheen, I could see you shaking your head. What do you think about Senate Bill 17 and the direction that's going in?
I found the implementation of SB 17 really damaging to our students. So the DEI programs at the University of Texas, and I'm speaking only for myself, not for the university, were paths to success for our students, and provided community for them, and provided them with professionals who helped them make their way through the university. And without those DEI professionals, students have been relying on each other, they've been relying on the remaining staff members, they've been relying on faculty, but they don't feel as well supported at the university. And then secondly, I believe that DEI has become a catch-all term. It was a technology that was intended to produce fairness in employment, fairness in access to the university, and now a course that happens to use the word diversity or equity or inclusion or social justice is being targeted on the in a way that I think is really, really damaging to students' right to learn, to faculty's right to teach, to free speech in the classroom. So I'm really concerned about this broadening of the definition of DEI.
With that, I want to turn now, Dr. Johnson, you mentioned specifically the taxpayer aspect of the relationship with the higher education. Governor Greg Abbott, in his recent State of the State address, said that he wanted to look into eliminating any taxpayer money going towards what he called diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. I want to get your thoughts. Is that something that is possible? And if so, why should we do that?
I hope it's possible. You know, and the reason why we should do it, and we're going to take off the Texas Public Policy hat right now and put on my Regent hat. I'm a member of the Board of Regents at Texas Southern University, and we don't have DEI. One of the things that when we look at DEI is a discriminatory practice, and when we look at the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was, if you read the bill, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 it prohibits discrimination in every area, and it also actually limits funding, federal funding, to places that are basically deploying discrimination. Now, what DEI does, the diversity equity, the equity component of that says that you have to look at identifiers and people and characteristics and give some favor to those individuals, and that's discrimination. And anytime that you have discrimination, you're doing a counteract to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. One of the things I did when I spoke before the House and the Senate committees in support of SB 17, I read the one paragraph in SB 17 that talked about the elimination of discrimination based on race, sex, gender, and sexual orientation. And folks said, well, yeah, they support that. And I said, well, if you support that, then I read the same paragraph, which is identical in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, if you're against, you know, SB 17, then don't tell me you would have stood with Dr. King. Don't tell me you would have marched for anti-discrimination, because they're the exact same. They're anti-discrimination bills, SB 17 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And so when you talk about a taxpayer, I'm a native Texan, Houstonian, been paying taxes here and served 8 years in the United States Army. You know, all my life contributing to not just the state of Texas, but also to our country. And so anytime I see discrimination, which that's what DEI is, anytime I see discrimination, I don't care what 3 letters you give it, I'm gonna fight against discrimination to uphold, you know, anti-discrimination bills, which is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And so at Texas Southern University, we're a large historically black university. We have never had a DEI office. We have never had a DEI officer. We have never had DEI on our campus. And as a board member, I plan to keep it that way. And I'm sure the representative, she wants to jump in, so you can just chime in anytime, and then we can go have some conversation.
But it's a historically black college, right? So in a way, you are discriminating. You're choosing who goes there. I think...
Oh, actually, we don't. Matter of fact, we have probably the most open enrollment of any college or university in the state of Texas, because...
Then you believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're inclusive.
No.
You're inclusive,
well,
right?
No. We
just
all
not the DEI, but just the words.
No. We believe in inclusiveness, right?
Right.
And we're very diverse.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
But we do not believe in equity in the way DEI performs, is simply because equity says we all have to end up at the same place. We believe in equality and equal opportunity. Martin Luther King did not get shot in the neck for equity. He got shot in the neck and died for equality. And the same thing with all the other civil rights activists. So they died for equality.
Equity is saying that not all people start out at the same place with the same opportunity. But some people who maybe in their younger years didn't get opportunities, didn't have a chance to talk to a counselor, for example. I would imagine the university set up DEI offices to give those students some counseling, to say, okay, you want to be a lawyer, here's what you have to do to become a lawyer, to encourage them, you know. So I think others might have that coming from their family. The dad's a lawyer, so here's what you do. So in other words, we're giving some opportunity, we're providing equity between those two kids that have different backgrounds and didn't have the same opportunity. And and honestly, I think that universities set up these DEI offices and staff members to help students, whether they're first-time college student, the first one in their family to go to college and maybe don't have the background and the knowledge to be successful. So the DEI office was there to make sure students are being successful. And I'm a legislator. I don't work on a university campus. I think it's hard for us to say, well, here's why those universities set up that DEI office and we should get rid of them, because I don't know. Obviously, there was a reason for them to do that. Who are we as legislators to say, get rid of it.
But I'm not a legislator, so, but I also worked at a university, and I worked at a university as an advisor. So we advised every student. It didn't matter what color you were. It didn't matter what your socioeconomic background was, or whether you were a first-time student or a first-generation student or a 10th-generation student. We advised every student. And that's what the civil rights movement was all about, equality. See, everybody gets an equal opportunity, but because of individual differences and based on merit, everybody's not going to end up at the same place. And that's what equity is about, ending up at the same place. And that's not reality.
And I don't think anybody's objecting from counseling, right? Career guidance and the like, that's perfectly fine. We want that. It was the silliness, right? It was being concerned about their perpetuating whiteness, right? It was based on the way artists had sex. I mean, it just fell off a cliff. So again, the support mechanisms, you know, we want that. It was just such a distraction, such silliness, that we got to steer our universities back to, and that's our job as legislators, is provide policy guidance and the like. And so when we see our universities taking their eye off the ball, we do need to course correct. So like, you literally had DEI pushing to have separate graduations based on the color of people's skins. That's offensive to me. You literally had DEI offices saying certain minorities were achieving too much. That's crazy. We don't do that in the state of Texas. We're not supposed to do that in our universities. The job of our universities is to prepare those students to enter the workforce. And I don't know how you debate that. That stuff's just incredibly silly.
Where did they have a...
Texas A&M had, was proposing a graduation for black students. One of the universities was making commentary that the Asian community was doing too well. I mean, it was all over. I mean, Google it and you'll see it. There was testimony to those facts, right? So again, I think we need to be careful not to couple, you know, things like career guidance and counseling and all those types of things. I don't think anybody objects to that. What we object to is the objectionable things that people were doing in the auspices of equity.
And Representative Shaheen is directly on point. We don't want to couple student support services with DEI. It's two different things.
Right.
And we've always, every college and university has historically had student support services, student affairs, counseling, advising, intrusive advising for students who needed a whole lot of help and support. We've always had those kinds of things, but DEI is a total different thing, and it brings in an element of discrimination, and you cannot get around that. And I see that Paula wants to chime in.
I wanted to talk about the graduation. So UT did have graduations for Latino and Latina students, graduations for black students, and these were celebrations for these students and their families. These students' parents or grandparents had not had the opportunity to go to UT, and this was a way for them to celebrate their achievement. It wasn't a separate graduation, it was an additional graduation.
Well, why do it based on color? I mean,
it's not based on color.
Why not have a graduation for first-generation students that are graduating from college? Why do you have to focus on the fact that maybe I have more pigmentation in my skin because I'm Middle Eastern than you're Anglo? I mean, what difference does it make?
Well, it's not based on color. It's based on cultural identity. Cultural identity. Being Latino or Latina is a cultural identity.
Pigmentation of somebody's skin. And so, look, I think we ought to celebrate the fact that this is a first-generation student that is getting a college degree. I think it's awesome. But to focus on the fact that you should treat me differently because I'm Middle Eastern, that's wrong. Treat me differently if I'm excelling in a certain area, so you want to give me counseling that, hey, you should get into engineer and that type of thing. Treat me differently that way. Don't treat me just because my skin pigmentation is darker than other people.
You know, I really must insist that it's not about skin pigmentation. Okay. It's about cultural identity.
You said Latinos and
Latino is not a racial identification.
Right?
I did say black, and what I mean is students who identify as black.
No, but let me ask Paula something, really.
Yeah.
Because I think this is interesting. You know, how would it sound for Texas Southern University to have a graduation for white students? How would you feel about that?
So I think it would be up to those students.
No. But the students don't make the decision, to have a graduation for somebody. I mean, these decisions come from the board to the administration on down.
No, these graduations for cultural groups came from the students who were part of those cultural groups who wanted to celebrate themselves, and then the university did support them in doing it. It wasn't a top-down thing. It was totally generated by the students themselves.
But you're dividing them.
Right.
And it's in addition. She already said they have the graduation. This is
There's
in
a
addition.
big inclusive graduation for everybody.
It's not.
Everybody.
We've got a lot.
But that's just
I know. We were
But
talking
you said
about
you
it.
wanted to generate
I know,
this.
We said it wasn't going to be heated. I know.
DEI is exclusive now. Not inclusive.
I do want
I would
to.
not be able to go to either one of those graduations. Okay, sorry.
I know. We'll have plenty of other opportunities to talk about DEI. Dr. Strong, I do want to ask you, as someone again who is in these universities every day, how would you characterize the last year and a half or so from your experience as a faculty member at University of Texas at Austin?
It's been really tumultuous. So adjusting to SB 17 was very, very hard for the university. We arrived in January. January 1st, it went into effect, and the Multicultural Engagement Center was shuttered. This was a place that was open to students of multiple cultures. And so neither they nor many faculty could understand why it was not consistent with SB 17. It was just shuttered. The staff was fired. This was a place students were used to going for club meetings, for study halls, etc., and it was just gone. The same with the Gender and Sexuality Center, which was open to anybody of any gender, any sexuality, and provided lots of information for students about sexuality, really important health information and relationship information. That was suddenly gone as well. And the university hadn't prepared the students for this. They went to look for their space, and their space was not there. So we spent that semester trying to find ways to support the students. They were trying to find ways to support themselves. Many of their clubs could no longer be directly supported by the university, so they had to set up their own checking accounts. They had to basically be on their own to keep their programs going. And then, of course, we had the protests in the spring, and that was very tumultuous as well.
And we certainly will get into the protests in just a little bit. I know I'm opening up a can of worms here by going back to the DEI conversation. I had this question listed for Dr. Johnson, but anyone is welcome to weigh in. You kind of, and I'm pointing it to you because you kind of already alluded to this when you specifically talked about diversity, the words diversity, equity, and inclusion. You said that it was equity that you really had a problem with. I'm curious, if we were to change the word to equality, if it was diversity, equality, and inclusion, would you have a problem with it? And how do we promote diversity, equality, and inclusion in our universities?
I want to say one quick thing, and then I'm going to move to this point. It's interesting because University of Texas seems to be having a total different experience than Texas Southern University. So we can't say all universities are experiencing the exact same thing, because right now Texas Southern University is trending up in every bracket. Our first-time, full-time freshmen, up. Retention rates are up, going up. Everything is going up on that end, which is we're having a very good time. And what I'm hearing from Paula is they're having a very tough time. So it's just two different types of universities in the same state. And so I just wanted to make that clear, that every university is not having a very tough time dealing with SB 17. Some universities in the state of Texas are having a very good time right now and moving forward. Now, when we talk about equity and equality, see, the words mean something. Words make a difference. That was just like if you write a bill and you say something shall be or something may be. Mm-hmm.
Big difference.
Shall and may,
Sure.
big difference.
Huge difference.
Equity, equality, big difference. That changes the whole scope of things. Equality puts us back to Civil Rights Act of 1964. See, because James Brown had a song. I mean, back in the day, in the 60s, you know, the movement was about, it had many different ways of getting the message out. One of the ways was music. And you had James Brown, Harry Belafonte, you know, Sammy Davis Jr., all these guys sung songs about uplifting and moving toward equality. James Brown had a song. He said, I don't want nobody giving me nothing. Open up the door and I'll get it myself. All I want is an equal opportunity as a man, see? And so when you talk about equality, that puts us on the road of where the founders wanted us to be when they said all men are created equal. They never mentioned equity. All men are created equal. And so you're absolutely right. When you talk about equality, that changes the whole picture. You know, everybody, we live in a diverse society. Houston, I was born and raised in Houston, Texas, one of the most diverse cities in America. Every culture is in Houston. And everybody wants to take part of our economy and of our society. Everybody wants to be included. But everybody wants equal opportunity. Equity is a total different word, and it transforms the whole idea.
But then again, how do you, you know, we have these ideas of what you could label as DEI, and it sounds like you would disagree with them. So how do we promote those things that you know, looking forward, how do we promote diversity and inclusion in universities without DEI policies?
Don't talk about how we're different.
Well,
right?
and you're spot dead on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You create a equal playing field, everybody gets the same thing coming in. You know, we used to have this thing at Texas Southern. Growing up in Houston, used to have this saying, you know, it's easy to get in TSU, but you got to work your butt off to get out of it, you know? And so you're only going to get out based on the hard work and the merit, but because everybody wanted to give equal access and equal opportunity to people, that should happen, but everybody should not end up. Some folks are life is going to happen, and some folks are not going to graduate. Some folks are not going to go on and become great successes in law and in medicine and whatever, because different things happen. But they have an equal opportunity.
So in my
why there's some frustration here, and it's because the whole premise, there's an issue with this premise that we have to do all this stuff at our university. So let me give you an example. After the Hispanic community in the state of Texas, the fastest growing demographics in the state of Texas is the Asian community, Asian and Indian community. And it's awesome because not only are we getting, the state of Texas getting the cream of crop from all over the nation, they're coming from all over the world, right? And so they are accelerating. They're doing great in high school. They're doing great in college, and they're doing great. And there's no, you know, no entity is being formed in our universities to ensure that our Asian students achieve well and they're Indian or anything like that. It's actually, if you want to talk about the different groups, the different groups that we're targeting to help, we're actually hurting them. And so all that to say is, if we want to knock this stuff out with equality and that type of stuff, quit talking about what's different about us.
Right.
Again, none of that is helping my constituents. Again, my fastest growing demographic, and again, across the state of Texas, the Asian Indian community. There's no DEI office. In fact, they were targeting some of my constituents because they were accelerating so well. I was getting emails from my Asian constituents that were actually concerned because they were being discriminated against because they were doing so well. So anyhow, all that to say is, let's just stop talking about what's different about us.
Yeah, I'll turn to Dr. Strong very quickly, and then I want to go to
I just want to say Asian students were hurt by SB 17. There are many Asian cultural groups, dance groups, social clubs of various kinds that lost their university support because of DEI, even though all of these groups are open to all students. So that many students of many groups suffered from the way DEI was interpreted. And maybe that wasn't the intention of the legislators, but it cast a very broad
I don't
net.
think a lot of students are devastated because their club's not supported by the university. They can still have their club. But
They spend their evenings doing the kind of work that's, well, I talk to these students. They come to me, they tell me what they're doing.
And I'm just telling you, I had parents come to me that were Asian, and they were being targeted. Their children were being targeted because they were Asian, and that's wrong, and we shouldn't be doing that.
And you think that's because of DEI?
That's exactly what it was, because of DEI. That's exactly what it was. So, anyhow, all that to say is there is so much great opportunity in the state of Texas. If you work hard in school, and you study, you have a great future, whether you're going to go to university, go to the military, or enter the workforce. And so, again, these DEI initiatives, I mean, they were an embarrassment. All the different silly things, I've repeated it multiple times, all the silly things that they were doing, and had the reverse effect. So at the end of the day, let's just create equal opportunity for these individuals and let them work as hard as they can, and let's see where they land. We're going to have the support groups there, but anyhow, DEI just got incredibly silly.
I want to turn to Representative Goodwin, specifically because you sit on the House Appropriations Committee that's going to be in charge of university funding. Before we talk about the impact that SB 17 has had on that, I want to start by talking about university funding in general. How would you characterize it as it stands today?
Well, we spend a lot. I mean, I was amazed at how many universities, colleges that we have in the state, and each of them came before our committee to talk about their needs, and each of them said, we need our institutional enhancement funding, please replace that. And so this being my first time on appropriations, wasn't certain what they meant. So I asked around, and apparently it was because of not sufficiently removing DEI from the college campuses that whole portion of their budget had been struck, over $400 million.
So with that, what the sort of punishment, if you will, of SB 17 was that if schools did have these DEI, offices, positions, things of that nature, that they would lose university state funding for their universities. What sort of impact would that have?
Well, I mean, they have taken away the DEI offices. They've fired those staff. They have closed them, and still that's not enough for the governor, lieutenant governor, whoever made the decision to slash that part of their budgets. And we heard from every single one of them the impacts it would have. They would have to let go more staff. They would have to close programs, maybe not to open up the next program they were hoping to open up in nursing. We kept hearing about all the need for particularly healthcare workers, but also aviation. So these universities are thinking about the next program that's needed right now with the society that we're in, and they're worried that they can't open those programs because of this funding cut.
I want to talk about these jobs that you mentioned. I'll start with Dr. Strong, and then I'm going to turn to you, Representative Shaheen. Dr. Strong, just because I'm sure you knew people who are out of a job or have left the state of Texas because of this. Tell me about that impact.
So faculty have found this to be an environment that is very difficult to work in, especially faculty who teach in the area of ethnic studies, gender studies. SB 17 has carve-outs for teaching and research, but there are some bills that are in this current session that are real attacks on academic freedom, on our teaching about race or gender or sexuality or cultural diversity or social justice or social stratification. These are terms that are basic to social science and to much of the humanities. Many of us cannot imagine teaching our subjects without introducing our students to those topics. So it's as if DEI was a wedge that is now, encompassing a larger and larger territory of university life to the detriment of faculty and students.
Let me just say one thing, because
I know we're just going to let you talk, right?
let me just say one thing, because, you know, on institutional enhancement, and, you know, the representative said that everybody's being affected because of SB 17, you know, because they're trying to go further with DEI elimination. But again, when they froze the resources right now on institutional enhancement, that's everybody. You know, our university doesn't have DEI, so you can't say it's because of DEI. Our university doesn't have DEI. And Paula, when you speak, you don't speak for every university. You speak for University of Texas. And so, because you're at University of Texas, so you speak for University of Texas. So if University of Texas is experiencing those sorts of things, you gotta let people know, because the viewing audience will think that we're talking all universities, which we're really not. Because if I'm giving you an instance where there's a university that's not experiencing any of the things that you just talked about. There's no faculty leaving. We're teaching social studies, we're teaching history, we're teaching math, we're teaching technology, we're teaching, you know, healthcare. Everything is going just fine at some universities, and I'm giving you one right now. And because when we look at the equity component and the discrimination component, a lot of times what people like to use DEI and say this is going to help African Americans. And you hear that every single place you go. And what I'm saying to you is it does not help African Americans, and it is a direct contrast to what we've achieved in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and we're still moving toward equal opportunity for everybody. I'm not saying everything is perfect in the state or everything is perfect in the nation, but we are moving toward equal opportunity for everybody, and we're on that road, and we really, and I'm hard set against any distractions in getting to that point where we're all, like Representative Shaheen said, we're not talking about each other's differences. We're all stepping in on an equal playing field, and then allowing our energy and our ingenuity and our God gifts, talents, and abilities to move us forward.
Well, with that, UT Austin is the flagship school of the biggest system in the state, and as many.
But it's not the only school.
No, of course.
And I want you to understand that, because if you want to use DEI in the sense that most people use it, and saying that this is going to help lift up those people who were downtrodden, which is, and then they always show the black people, African American people. I'm telling you, no, that is not what we're looking for. I'm an African American man sitting right here telling you that is not what we're looking for. Matter of fact, it robs us of our dignity when you tell us you're going to give us 10 feet ahead, head start on somebody else. No, I don't want a head start. We want an equal start.
And I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's truly about trying to figure out how to make all of the students successful. That's what a university is about. How can we help all of these students be successful? And sometimes it takes being more thoughtful about it. So I'll give an example. I have an employee who is Indian, and she was told by one of her teachers, oh, you don't want to go to law school, you just, you know, marry well, whatever. But someone who was in a DEI office suggested, here's how you get to law school, here's how you fulfill your dream. So it's just the difference of being conscientious about helping people and trying to create those opportunities. Maybe we change it to diversity, equality, and inclusion, and then you wouldn't have a problem.
But we don't, there is no issue with the counseling, the career counseling. That's perfectly fine. Again, I don't talk to a lot of companies that are looking for students that have, you know, graduated and taken class about the way people have sex or the history of racism and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're almost hurting these kids because you're you're sucking up a lot of their time where instead they could be learning about calculus or engineering or accounting or business finance or whatever, and instead you're actually hurting these kids, these students, because you're not preparing them for the workforce. And the reality is the job of our universities is to produce the workforce that the private sector and the public sector needs to do the work so that our economy can continue to grow. And quite frankly, you're hurting students doing that.
So as a woman, I would say there's a lot of discrimination in the workforce, and that for women
that DEI thing's not working then.
Well, for women to know about the history of discrimination and about women's fight for equality, I think is very, very helpful. And our students learn all of these STEM topics, but knowing your own history is absolutely essential to being a thoughtful human being.
Sure, have it as a great chapter in a
are.
history book, but you don't need a whole course on that. Again, at the end of the day, you need students to graduate with skills that the private sector and the public sector are needing, and that's how people earn a living and make money and grow.
We need archivists. We need people who work in museums. We need people who know history.
To your point, Paula, you know, my first degree is in history and government. You know, my master's in clinical psychology and then doctorate in education. So, you know, I mean, it's good for everybody to know their history, you know, and that's not DEI. That's not, you know.
Well, it's going to become DEI if we are told that we cannot teach about anything that is so-called divisive. That is going to really, really harm.
Nobody's saying that.
I do.
Well, it's in bills that you all are considering.
And we'll get to those bills. We'll get to those bills in just a second.
Yeah, because there are no bills to cut out history.
We're going to get to a bill in just a second. I want to play actually for you, Dr. Strong. Last December, we sat down with outgoing UT Austin President Jay Hartzell, and I asked about the impact that DEI ban and the handling of the protests would have on student recruitment, and we have a soundbite from him that we're going to play here.
I do think the fact that applications continue to go up, the fact that our student body continues to get more diverse, I think that does counter the story that you know, underrepresented students are going to not want to come here still.
Just your thoughts. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I think that is a good point. Students really, really want to come to the University of Texas, and we're very proud of that. But we do not yet have enough black students at the University of Texas if we want to mirror the population of the state of Texas. So that is something actually that the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement was set up precisely to try to address. Maybe it's it's not the best remedy, but there still needs work to be done to both recruit students from underrepresented backgrounds and make sure they succeed while they're at UT.
And we heard.
But I don't think that's the goal of a university to say, you know, we don't have enough black students, and so we need to create something that would allow. We need to lower the bar and create something that would allow more blacks or attract more black students to come to our school. That would be the equivalency of me as a member of the Board of Regents, which I've never said in my entire life, let alone said it as a member of the Board of Regents. We don't have enough white students, or we don't have enough Hispanic students. So let's figure out a way to lower the standards so we can bring in some more.
So are you saying you have to lower the standards to bring in more black people?
That's what she's talking about.
I said nothing about lowering standards.
No, I got the implication, though.
It's just looking at the balance.
But I got the implication. And so what I'm saying to you is, it's not a university, it should not be a university's mantra to say, I don't have enough of this color, I don't have enough of that color. Why don't you just provide good academic programs and let whatever students come from around the state or around the globe to your university and appreciate those programs? Because if Texas is big enough to accommodate students of every culture, and they have choices, and so you can provide good academic programming, Make it equal for everybody. If this is what you do for this group of people to get in, make it equal for that next group of people, every group of people to get in. And that way, people who come in don't feel like, you know, they come in with dignity and they leave with dignity.
I want to, we've got a lot of topics that we still want to get to. We're running a little bit out of time. Representative Shaheen, I want to get to you about your role sitting on the Higher Education Committee. Yeah. When you watched what happened last year as far as the protests that happened, not only at UT Austin, but at several different universities, what did you make of the university's response and then the state's response in that as well?
I think overall was pleased with the response. I mean, it was just a weird thing to watch. You literally had students that were like protesting in favor of terrorist organizations, so that was just really bizarre to watch. But at the end of the day, you are allowed to protest in the United States and obviously in the state of Texas. So I thought the colleges did a really good job with respect to if students wanted to protest, and there were some faculty members as well, but if they wanted to protest, they could protest. But when they started rioting, when they started damaging property, when they started obstructing the operations of the university, there were some arrests that were made. But overall, I mean, they were afforded their First Amendment right to protest and freedom of speech, and that's always a very difficult area to navigate. And I think we erred on free speech, and I think we should always do that. But it was frustrating to watch, yeah.
To be clear, I was there that day, and I don't remember seeing anyone support Hamas. They supported the idea of a free state of Palestine. Do you think those two are mutually exclusive?
No. Let's be clear. So they were supportive. They were making statements about from the river to the sea. That is a very clear indication of wiping out the Jewish population. So there was discrimination by those students based on somebody's religious belief. Let's make no mistake about that. There's a display at one of our universities right now. It's an art display that has a bomb with the Star of David and a bunch of blood on it. So let's be really clear. Those protesters were talking about wiping out millions of people because of their religious beliefs. Without question, that's what they were doing. And look, a lot of that, there was a lot of references to the attack on Israel in October. There were over 1,000 Jewish people slaughtered. It was horrific. It was incredible evil. They were literally beheading little babies, burning little babies. I mean, they were just doing incredibly unspeakable things. That was the terrorist group Hamas that did that. They invaded that country. And so you did have students favor that terrorist organization. Period, end of story. That's what they did. I think it's disgusting, but at the end of the day, they have a right to protest and say whatever they do. They don't have to agree with me, obviously. So again, to answer your question about how the universities did, even though the protests were incredibly disgusting, they could protest. And the arrest didn't happen until they turned to violence and riots and obstructed university operations. And so overall, I was pleased with what they did.
So the students have the right to have a different opinion.
Absolutely. And I said that very specifically. They have a right to
as
protest,
you said,
but they don't have a right to riot. They don't have a right to violence. They don't have a right to destructing property. And they did that. When they did that, they were arrested.
So I was there. I was there.
You were there at every university. That's incredible.
Well, we were just talking about UT.
I was at the University of Texas at Austin, which is where
so you're saying there were no arrests that were made?
Yeah, there were arrests made, and they were not made because of rioting, and they were not made because of destruction of property. They were made because the university had determined that they were not going to allow the protesters to occupy part of the campus. I think it was very heavy-handed as well. I think it prevented the students from their right to peaceful assembly, their right to free speech, and I think the students were acting out of a desire for peace. That they really believe, the ones I've spoken to, and I've spoken to many of them, were really concerned about the loss of life, both of Jewish people and of Palestinian people. They really believe that they needed to speak out, that it was their responsibility to do so.
I was in touch with the government relations individuals from the university, and so you painted a picture that isn't quite accurate. So when you talked about law enforcement moving in because they were protesting, those students were actually blocking the activity and the operations of the university. That's why they stepped in that specific case.
And let me just say this as well. That should happen, because a university is not there for riots and those sorts of things. People go to universities to learn, and you know, free speech. Yeah, you can have free speech, but when you're infringing on other people, and you're impeding other people from doing what they need to do so that they can learn and get their degrees, because not everybody on the campus wants to riot, not everybody on the campus wants to protest, and so students should be able to exercise free speech in a peaceful manner, you know, and I believe in free speech. But what I don't believe in is paid rioters coming on campus and starting riots on campus.
There was no evidence of paid rioters
but let me give you some evidence, because there were some folks that came on to Texas Southern University's campus, and they brought a stack of their flyers, and they were paid, and they were trying to pass them out right as we were getting ready for our commencement. And the thing about it is, and I was so proud of our students, because they said, we're not involved in that. We're not involved in that. Take your stuff, your papers, and leave. Those were paid people who came on university's campus and really started riling up students, and then getting students to come out for Hamas. I saw it happen. So you say you're there with the students. You're probably there with your students more than I am. I'm a member of the board. But when that situation happened, we were made aware of the folks who came on campus and how it was dealt with, and that's why we were so proud of them. Not just our students, but our students' parents, because they were there on campus, because they were getting their kids ready for commencement.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I do want to get to our final question for the night, and we'll do it similarly where we'll go down the line, but this time we'll start with you, Dr. Strong, which is just knowing, you know, we let this discussion kind of carry on a little bit. Seeing everything that's going on, I'm going to ask each of you guys, do you think higher education in the state of Texas is heading in the right direction? Dr. Strong, I'll start with you.
I think there's many ways that higher education is heading in the right direction. We have really, really fine institutions of higher education. We have amazing students. We have really, really fine faculty. I do think that there, both nationally and in the state, there are some efforts to really limit what students are able to learn in the classroom, what faculty are able to teach, what faculty are able to research. And I think that is definitely heading in the wrong direction.
All right, Representative Shaheen, your thoughts.
I'm incredibly excited about our higher ed in the state of Texas, and well, unfortunately we've spent an hour on the negatives, but no, our enrollment's growing. We have close to 700,000 students in our 4 years. Actually, the thing that I'm most excited actually is our community college, which have a little bit north of 700,000 students. Because the reason why I'm excited there is, you know, if you look at the suburbs in the middle class to wealthy areas in the state of Texas, those students are growing up in stable families. If they want to go to college, they can. Their high schools have real high graduation rates, and they're going to be successful. Our low-income areas is where we have lower graduation rates, and our students there, I mean, it's really a decision between going into criminal justice or you know, getting a degree and going into university. That's why our school choice is so important for our state. But our community colleges, which are incredibly affordable, which are doing a much better job as far as partnering with the private sector and building 2-year certification programs to where these students, after they graduate from high school, spend 2 years in community college and they enter the workforce certified. It's incredible and it's exciting. They're also doing dual credit courses with our universities as well. And our community colleges it's really affordable. It's like $700, $800 a semester, and so it's a great opportunity for our low-income students, and that's our fastest-growing demographic in the state of Texas. So all that to say is we did a lot of changes to, it was House Bill 8 last session. The way we organize our community colleges and funded our community colleges became outcome-based, and I'm just incredibly excited for the future of our higher institutions. But let's remember our community colleges.
Representative Goodwin, your thoughts?
Well, since Representative Shaheen threw in there the choice issue, I'm just going to say that the vast majority of our students, K through 12, go to public schools, and I want to make sure that we support our public schools as much as we possibly can so that they are prepared for community college or four-year college or whatever trade school they decide to go to. After hearing all of the university chancellors and presidents come and speak to us, I'm very optimistic. I think they're on the right course. I think there's a lot of great minds in our universities, and they're doing everything they can to have the best outcomes. I think we as legislators need to give them the room to do that. Don't overregulate, don't micromanage, and give them the resources that they need to make sure that as many students as we have going into the universities are coming out successful.
All right, Dr. Johnson.
I mean, I'm extremely optimistic about where education is going, you know, both primary, secondary, and post-secondary. You know, as Representative Shaheen mentioned, we're looking now at becoming a school choice state, which is going to help a lot of folks that are in low-income zip codes find better educational options for their children, which is going to increase the student success on the outcome side, moving into higher education. And I'm also excited about where we're now going and where we're now headed in terms of higher education. I think we were about to be derailed a little bit until SB 17. I think we're now back on the right track. And so I'm excited about where we are and the future of higher ed in the state of Texas.
All right, we want to thank each of you all for joining us for this, at times lively discussion, shall we say. We appreciate you guys' time this evening. We appreciate you for watching our Rewriting Higher Education Town Hall Special. Good night.